Welcome to the Real Board Loft. I'm Trip Foreman. We have Real Team rider Brett Barley with us today, and this is the next episode of Under the Glass. Today we're going to be talking about the Lost Subdriver 2.0 in Lightspeed Construction. This was one of the boards of your initial Quiver, right? As a free agent, being able to roam anywhere in Real and just kind of grab what you want. Brett, tell us a little bit about this board.
So I had the Driver 2.0, but I needed something for a little bit smaller, softer surf. Driver worked, but I wanted something a little more dialed in. And everyone had told me how good the Subdriver went. A lot of guys use that on the QS. I was also going to be going to Waco, so I wanted something I heard that was really good for the pool.
Right.
So I grabbed this thing to try out, and I was really impressed with how well it went in small waves.
So let's talk about your height, your weight, and the dimensions on this board.
Yep, so I'm 5'9", 163 pounds, and this is a 5'8" by 18 3/4 by 2.3, and it's 26.25 liters.
And how does that compare to your driver, to the Driver 2.0?
So the driver's like 25.95. It's basically 26 liters. So there's a little more here. And the purpose of that is, for small waves, I like having a little more float. So I've found out that, floating over flat sections, driving in gutless surf, needing some power, having a little bit extra foam helps with that.
And you're riding this shorter, right, than your Driver 2.0?
Yes.
How long's, if this is 5'8", how long's your driver?
That one's 5'9".
5'9", okay.
So not a huge difference,
okay,
but the feel is completely different.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the shape differences on this board compared to the driver. Obviously it's very similar to the driver, and it's an offshoot to the driver, but what Matt did on this board is made it shorter, made it wider, flattened the rocker. It has that same concave style on the board, but more pronounced, so deeper concaves, and it also has a wider tail block. So back here, wider back here. And again, this board is also in Lightspeed Construction. The last thing is just extending the wide point further forward, so you got a little bit wider nose. So all of these things are just to give you a smaller, more compact, more powerful board underneath your feet to help generate speed, like in conditions that don't have speed.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to the surfing. How did this thing feel?
It was really good. So it was great because, especially at Waco and the pool, I was able to do like a complete comparison in identical conditions. And on like the more rippable wave, it's like waist to chest high, this went so much better. The driver felt good, but it felt just a little slow. There wasn't enough surface area there as far as like driving down the line to like hold speed and generate speed. In the pool, you got to generate a lot. This went a lot faster. I was able to wrap full cutbacks with it and surf the whole wave without any hiccups compared to the driver, which felt good in like certain sections, but not necessarily for the whole wave. This was able to maintain speed through that entire gutless section. Yeah, I loved it. So now I'm going to be riding it. I've ridden it when it's been small here at home this summer.
Right.
There's not a lot of waves in the summer, but if I want to go out there and rip some turns, do a couple little airs, it's like thigh waist high. This board is really good.
It seems like a lot of people are gravitating towards epoxies, whether it be stringerless, stringered, EPS epoxy in the pool. Why are people doing that?
Well, the main reason is just buoyancy. An epoxy is more buoyant than a poly, and so in the pool, the fresh water you're not going to float as much in the fresh water as you do in salt water. So you need that like extra volume. You need that extra buoyancy. You get that with an epoxy. It's also lighter. So then you get the extra buoyancy. You have less, drag, and in the pool you can perform better.
What about is it a spring thing? Like are people looking for that pop that you get out of the stringerless? Because I know you've been there before, right? With your stringered supers, and then now you're there with this. What do you notice stringered poly versus this in the pool?
I mean, there's definitely just in general, whether it's the pool or the ocean, there's way more pop and flex and push with a stringerless than with a stringer board. So in the pool especially, you want every advantage you can get out of your board because the wave doesn't do that much for you. You have to be able to make the speed, you have to be able to generate the drive and get the pop and the lift. And so having a board that has all of that can help you is crucial.
Okay, that's good. That's good to hear, and also to kind of understand it. So let's talk about the wave range on this thing, because I think a lot of people want to know what's the bottom of the wave range and the top of where it works.
I mean, I don't know I've found the top necessarily. I did ride it one day that was shoulder head high, and it went insane. I actually would have ridden my driver 2.0, but it had a ding and was getting fixed.
Okay.
And so I grabbed this thing and was like, well, it's kind of meant for smaller waves, and it was steep and bully that day. And it went epic. Like, I had a couple big air sections, was linking some turns into airs and blowtails, and you know, I was actually really surprised. I didn't expect it to perform as well in that type of surf that I would normally ride like a little more bladey shortboard in.
Right.
And so I actually like the extra width up front when it comes to doing airs. Whether you're doing a rotation or a straight air, there's just a little more surface area to land on your front foot.
Okay.
But yeah, it went insane, and I honestly was surprised.
The fins they're using on this board, let's talk about fins. Let's flip it over and talk fins a little bit. So this board's got future boxes. What fins are you using? So
fins wise, I always use the John Johns, the mediums from Futures, and they're my go-to fin. They've been my go-to fin for, I don't know, since they've made them. And I really like them in this board, just like I do in the driver. Again, I think being that I ride this board in smaller waves, I think I do want to experiment a little bit with, you know, different templates and stuff and construction, see what fins might help this board more. But, you know, in small waves, it goes really well. And again, like, I just am kind of a creature of habit. So if it's working, I don't like to mess with it. And it feels really good. Like, I've ridden it in quite a few like thigh to waist to stomach high days. It's really fast, sharp, and just kind of does what I need it to do.
And predictable.
Yeah,
like
predictable.
You know what's going to happen.
I know what's going to happen. There's no like, oh, well, I got to like figure this out, or, you know, surf the wave different. It's just, I can do whatever I want.
It's nice, like when you're trying out new gear, like to keep some things the same. So then you can focus on the things that are new, right? So you're already trying a new board, like in a new construction. You don't want to have new fins and then not really know which one it is, you know?
So that's one thing for me, you know, I know people that go through all different kinds of fins. They have all different sets for different boards, but then when they get a new board, you know, how do you dial in that board? Because fins can make or break a board. I mean, you could get a board and hop on it with the wrong kind of fins for it and be like, oh, this isn't good. And really all you have to do is change the fins and it becomes a completely different board. I've had boards like that where, you know, these fins didn't go as well. And so then I put in like some Pizels or something, or the EAs, and all of a sudden it starts going better. Yeah, I think that for me, having like a go-to set of fins is nice for when I get a new board. I put those in and I can start from there and then, you know, figure out, all right, where do I go next? Do they work, or what do I need to do?
Yeah, keep one thing the same and then kind of expand out from there. Let's talk about the feel of this board and what is it that you like? Like, what, just keep it as low tech as you can, and just
low tech is perfect.
The sensations that draw you to this board, that actually cause you to grab this board and pull it out and surf it.
Well, it's super flat. The rails are super flat, so compared to the driver that has a little bit more rounded rail and is more forgiving on, like, you know, a real wave. In small waves, this gives you way more speed.
All right.
And so, you know, I can just grab this thing when it's like this big and go out and like lay into real turns, flip airs and stuff, and it just feels good. Feels good is like the most basic way to explain it, but I would say that my favorite thing about it is that it just fills that void for like smaller surf for performance. You know, I'm like a performance-based surfer. That's just how I like to surf. You know, I love to hop on a twin fin and cruise as well, but I just enjoy like doing some backhand turns and trying some airs, and when it's a little more gutless, even again if it's like shoulder head high but more gutless and less steep, this is my go-to.
The next thing I want to like kind of focus on is like putting this thing in your quiver underneath the driver, because you see a lot of people like their quivers all over the place. Like they go from one board to the next board and they're completely different, and so you have to almost learn how to surf again every time you get on a different board. How does this thing work with the driver above it? Like how did you feel that paired up as a team?
Yeah, so I think it makes that transition just completely mindless. You don't have to think about it. I've gone through the same thing you're talking about, where I have my go-to shortboard, but then my smaller wave board's like completely different, and so then I have to like, take a few waves to figure that out, and then when I go back to my shortboard, I'm like, I got to figure this out again. And between the sub driver and the driver, it's just seamless back and forth. You get similar feel out of this in small waves as you do the driver in a little bit more surf. And you just don't even have to think about it.
All right, and then last but not least, let's talk about who is this board for. You know, again, you mentioned WQS, like everybody on the Challenger series is using them, like in the micro surf. You're using this thing as a step down from the driver. Where's the ability level kind of cut on this thing? Like who can use this board and really enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, I really think anyone can. I think especially if you're coming out of like kind of learning in the fun shapes, like you've mastered, you know, riding a longboard, you started to do a fun shape or whatever, and now you're like, okay, I kind of want to dabble with a shortboard and see how it goes. I think this would be a really good board, especially in smaller surf. You know, it's just got the volume and the way the volume's laid out. It generates a lot of speed, it carries through flat sections, all those places that like a surfer that's learning would struggle, it helps you through itself. So I really think it's, you know, for anybody that's looking at a shortboard, but it definitely is more of a performance small wave shortboard.
Yes. So there's other boards that Lost makes that are probably going to be easier, like if you're just getting on a board this short. Yeah. But if you're, you know, athletic and like you got your game together,
and you're looking for like that next step, and you're, you know, I would get on this before I would get on the driver. I think the driver is like a more dialed in high performance board. Okay. I think this is going to fit a wider range of surfers.
And they're also like, because of the performance characteristics, they can ride this thing in a little bit less critical surf. Yeah. So like the whole world isn't going to be like kind of trying to swallow them up like while they're trying to, you know, surf the board. Okay, awesome, Brett. Thank you so much for joining us. If anybody out there has any questions on the Lost Subdriver 2.0, whether it be in PU Poly or Lightspeed EPS Epoxy Construction, whether it's about the design, the dimensions, ordering a stock board, or also ordering a custom board, you can always reach us at the shop, 252-987-6000, or look us up online, realwatersports.com/surfing. Thanks for tuning in.